Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. Today we're focusing on how the Salesforce1 Platform accelerates app development with a huge ROI, huge return on investment. My name is Dylan Steele. I am a senior member of the platform product marketing team, and I'm going to be guiding you through some of our information on the Salesforce platform and introduce a couple special guests who will be speaking to us today about their experience both researching and using the Salesforce1 platform to deploy applications. We're going to jump right into the webinar, but before we do, I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to see our safe harbor slide, which just says that if you're thinking about making a purchasing decision about Salesforce, we hope you make all those decisions on currently existing technology, as we may talk about some forward-looking technology in this webinar. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So I'm very excited today because we have two special guests who are joining us as part of this webinar on the Salesforce1 platform. The first is Al Hilwa, who's a Program Director of Application Development and Cloud Application Platforms with consultant IDC. And then I also have Elias Daye, who's joining us from Motorola. Elias has worked to build applications on the platform as a Senior Director of Business Operations. So today the three of us are all going to speak, and we're going to walk through an agenda that covers the Salesforce1 platform. What is it? What can you do with it? Al will join us from IDC to talk about his experience with PaaS technology as an analyst and also on the ROI that can be achieved by using the Salesforce1 platform. We'll give some buyer advice and guidance and then tell the story of how Motorola has used the Salesforce1 platform. So what is the Salesforce1 platform and what can it do for you? Well, this is a visual representation of all the technology that sits behind our Salesforce1 platform as a whole. It's made up of component pieces, Force.com, Heroku, and ExactTarget Fuel, all technology that help power applications. These applications are the very same ones we offer to our customers, our well-known Sales Cloud, CRM automation, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, and App Exchange. But today we're actually going to focus on the yellow box you see in the upper right-hand corner, which is custom apps that you can build for your employees, your customers, and your partners, all built on the very same technology that runs our Sales Cloud and our Service Cloud here at Salesforce. Now, why do people build apps on the Salesforce1 platform? It's because we offer them a competitive advantage. We offer them the opportunity to focus on innovation. We say that legacy platforms often force our IT department to focus on infrastructure. Because of the way you're set up, you have to manage that infrastructure and governance rather than focusing on innovation. With the Salesforce1 platform, we actually kind of turn that paradigm on its head and say, let us manage the infrastructure, let us make the governance piece much easier so that you can focus on actually building your application, designing the UI, and focusing on the business problems at hand. When we look at how applications have traditionally been built, they've been built in a legacy model that requires you to take a number of steps to go from ideas to applications. And those first few steps actually involve simply setting up and managing infrastructure, buying and setting up hardware, installing complete software, defining user access. And after you do that, there's also a stack of software that has to be managed, set up before you can build your application. This means setting up sharing rules, user profiles, security, and analytics, making sure that everything tests, operates correctly, scales, and then you can go on to potentially add layers of mobile and social and build your application. With the Salesforce1 platform, we take many of these steps off of the table for most of the people who develop on our platform. So instead of focusing on managing infrastructure in the software stack, you can focus directly on building that application. Many of our customers have come to us and said this is not only a competitive advantage, but it's shown them a much faster time to value, return on investment. So we're excited today to have one of those customers join us, as well as have IDC. Al Hilwa from IDC has actually run a report, and they've actually done a study specifically on companies who built on the Salesforce1 platform, and he has some interesting and exciting results to share with you today. So what I'd like to do now is not take up any more time telling you about the platform, but actually pass it over to Al, who can give you his experience from the IDC perspective. Al?
Thank you, Dylan. Hello, my name is Al Hilwa, so I'm in charge of application development software research at analyst firm IDC. Over the next 20-25 minutes or so, I want to talk to you about a project we undertook with Salesforce late last year. Now, I'll start with a brief introduction of the Platform as a Service, or PaaS market, then dive into the study results on the Salesforce platform, And finally, I will discuss PaaS selection criteria and provide some buyer guidance, as well as highlight the strengths and challenges that the Salesforce platform has in this context. Note I'll use the term Salesforce platform and Salesforce1 platform interchangeably. The name changed after we started this project, but we're referring to the same thing. So first, I want to talk to you a little bit, before we launch into the details of the study, I want to cover the PaaS and sort of highlight what it means. So let me paint the landscape for you. First of all, IT today is in an era where the transformations are moving faster than they've ever moved before. This space is actually accelerating. There are two key areas of transformations. We're going to broadly split them. Number one, new business models such as shifts from direct licensing of software to as-a-service delivery, and then monetization through more creative means, including advertising, support services, virtual goods, and so on. We sort of highlight in this chart. That's taking place. And number two, there's this massive expansion of IT into the consumer economy to practically digitize everything. So number one is changing the way consumers and enterprises are paying for IT and changing the way businesses are organized to deliver IT. Number two is revolutionizing enterprises by forcing them to accommodate consumer-style IT services and devices, and also turning end-user IT consuming enterprises into digital service vendors, purveyors. So not a day passes by without a company in retail and manufacturing and transportation, hospitality, etc., does not announce some opening up of APIs, exposing digital services, attracting developer ecosystems to add on further services, and possibly launching marketplaces and so on. This has become a commonplace in the industry. The net effect of all this is a shift of priorities from pure focus on cost, which never, of course, goes away and was a big deal in the recession, to prioritization of agility and productivity. So we're therefore more than ever looking for faster ways to build and deploy software. We're customizing a lot of software, building a lot of custom software. It's definitely the era of the developer. So enter PaaS technology. What is PaaS? Well, first of all, think of PaaS as a traditional and familiar application platform, that is to say a programming language and runtime libraries provided over cloud services. So what that means is the usual cloud attributes of web access, self-service, programmable REST APIs, granular units of computation assembled into elastic, resilient compute fabric. I mean, this is the ideal of cloud services, all integrated with monitoring and management services. All that good stuff begins to be part of the platform with PaaS. Now, there are different types of PaaS. One of the most important dimensions to classify PaaS offerings, and there's several, you could say private and public and so on, but one of the most important, in my opinion, relates to the abstraction of the programming model, because this essentially defines the nature of the skill set and effort needed to develop applications, and secondly, the constraints on the type of applications developed. Now, there's a continuum of abstraction, as this chart shows in the slide. So there's a scale where model-driven approaches are partially visual, perhaps, or not totally visual, or metadata-driven, and so on, including scripting languages. They are on the sort of focused on the ease and quickness of application construction process. And then there are code-driven approaches where you bring your own code that you develop perhaps elsewhere, most of the time elsewhere. These code-driven approaches are focused on speed and manageability of the deployment once the application is constructed. Now, this generally gives rise to two broad types of PaaS that are often conflated into the term PaaS. They are, however, focused on different problems, as we said, though they are adjacent in value proposition, in that they are about build and deploy. Now, Salesforce offers both types in the form of model-driven Force.com and code-driven Heroku PaaS. I just wanted to highlight that ahead of time as we dive into the actual study. So let's get into that, having set this up. Now, IDC interviewed 7 Salesforce.com supply platform references. All are based in North America by headquarters, but some with worldwide operations. The customer sizes range from 100 to about 3,000 employees each. Industries covered included technology, government, retailers, a few of those, professional services. There was actually, I think, one professional services company, despite the fact that this is repeated in the bullet. Platform applications reached, on average, about 90% of employees and about 100K external users for the customer interview. So again, these are averages, and these are numbers across the board. And so they're not small users of the technology. They're fairly significant. The percentage of apps that each of these guys classified on average ended up being 33%, or one-third of those apps were critical in the interviewed customer base. So that's the overall profile of the customers we talked to. Let's dive into a high-level summary of the areas of savings. Well, first of all, the aggregate benefit per 100 user saves are about 700,000, and we'll detail that in more depth later on. But there are generally four areas of benefit where we measure costs and savings as we compared Salesforce1 application development versus reported customer experiences in traditional development that was taking place prior to the wide-scale adoption of Force.com, which you might call legacy. We refer to this in the slide as on-premises solution that was prior, which in all cases they were all on-premise solutions. It's not surprising. The four areas are, number one, business productivity, fast application development, refocus staff on business, higher quality of applications. All of these were quantified and measured. Number two were infrastructure costs, and we quantified and measured savings in servers, software, PC and other hardware, travel, professional services used for the solution. Number three, IT staff productivity. We measured the avoidance of additional IT hires and reduced ongoing maintenance, quantified that. And number four, last but not least, user productivity, savings due to reduced downtime, which turned out to be significant. So in net, as we said, about 700,000 or so per 100 users was the average savings. So let's discuss that in more detail. So we're going to start with business productivity because it is the largest contributor of ROI value in the study. Over 300,000 net value of productivity gained annually per study participant on average. That's the biggest chunk of all the four categories. Now, what that was all about, it was business productivity is really a direct consequence of organizational agility, which was achieved with these tools. So the sooner apps are deployed to productive use, the more value is derived. And this was measured in granular form versus the prior solution in terms of how quickly apps were built, how quickly were the time to value. Faster apps lead to more engagement in users. So these apps came quickly, were engaging users quickly, began using them quickly, and that translated into savings, comparative savings. And the benefits also derive from improved quality of the app, just bigger range of capabilities like reporting services. So this is generally business productivity, and the chart highlights these quantities. And of course, in the paper itself, there's more depth on the methodology and what we exactly measure. The second area is infrastructure costs, not necessarily in order, but because I thought this was important since it is what's normally associated and understood by savings in cloud platforms. So we found in the aggregate about 60% cost savings over on-premise solutions used previously by study participants. I say on average in the aggregate. So those net savings amounted to about 100K of that 730,000. Compared to prior solutions. Again, we found 87% reductions in server costs, which you would not be surprised at because it is farmed off to the cloud. But there were, of course, PC savings and other networking hardware costs of savings associated with all that. There were also 78% reductions in consultancy costs, and I highlight these two because they're really significant. There were savings like client device networking equipment, as we said. So the third area is staffing costs. That's actually the second biggest area. So we talked about it last here. Next, in this area, we talk about 250,000 total savings per customer. So here, the reductions were across the board, including savings in hiring, recruitment, cost of staff, that weren't needed to be hired at all. And we, of course, use a burdened labor costs and so on in this model. Some 50%, over 50% reduction in application development costs because of the productivity of the environment. This was as reported by the interviewees. 50% more reduction in application maintenance costs, largely because upgrades of applications over the years were internalized by the platform itself and were not really an IT headache itself. So that's a great value. And we highlight some of these interesting remarks that people make to us in these charts that you can sort of read for yourself. All in all, customers were able to do many more apps with less money, fundamentally. So cost was definitely a factor, even though agility was bigger, as we talked about productivity and agility earlier. So the last area of coverage was the user productivity costs. Now this area mostly comes from from reduced application downtime. So increased productivity due to reduced downtime hours. This accounts for the remaining difference in the cost. Study participant reported a lot less downtime. And, you may hear a lot about cloud environments going down and so on, but it turns out that that's a lot less downtime than is typically experienced in your average mid-sized to large enterprise IT. So, it means, downtime means less work. Less downtime means more work, right? Was done by users compared to prior applications. In fact, downtime incidents were reduced to about 97.9% as we logged in the interviews, and the downtime hours were 99.8% fewer. This is a huge difference. So these four areas essentially cover the way we analyze the study. The final analysis, the ROI calculator on the per 100 application users, give us a 5-year return on investment per 100 users came to about 520%. That's right, 5 times return on investment in 5 years. The average payback period was about 7 months. Again, summarizing some of the other things we found in prior slides, 70% accelerated time to market, 80% more applications launched per year. A lot of interesting metrics are in the paper. You can go drill down to the 19-page study itself. All right. There's one last point that I wanted to highlight, which I think is super important. A comparison of the 2009 and 2013 studies. So it was not the first time that IDC did a study of this type with Salesforce. IDC conducted something similar on 10 Salesforce.com supplied customers in 2009. And the methodology and ROI calculations were a bit different, not directly comparable, so we don't have that comparison everywhere. We just have a high-level comparison in this chart. But the application deployment statistics, which we put in the chart, are actually comparable and is worthwhile to compare. So as you can see, the number of apps being built by the companies and the number of users has increased by at least an order of magnitude. It's really stunning, actually. Users reported many more complex apps being built, much more internal staffing and commitment around the platform than 2009. So we had some customers with 10 or 12 developers, or another 10 or 15, 20 support people. This is just an indication of the degree to which the platform is penetrated inside of these customers. So once they start using it, they keep using it and use it for more and bigger things. In short, there's a significant change in the size and scale over the 4 years for the Salesforce platform. All right. So let's get to the general area of what do we all do? How do we buy PaaS? And this is a really important piece because it's a broader discussion, and it's still early days for this category of software, and there's a lot of mistakes people can make. And so I thought it would be helpful to put together a list of things that you should sort of have on your checklist in terms of what to ask yourself before you make such evaluation for enterprises. So first of all, you should decide on what you want. Do you plan to develop code or to deploy code that's already developed, or do you plan to do both? And very often the larger enterprises want to do both. They have both styles of requirements. If you're considering a platform, try to understand the platform's limitations. Can you bring existing workloads into this PaaS? How much effort is needed to adapt the PaaS to platform constraints? And every platform has constraints, to be sure. That's just the nature of what it means to run applications in the cloud. But these constraints are often exactly how you get productivity out of the environments. And by the way, for things that you can't run in PaaS, that's what infrastructure as a service is all about, having virtual machines in the cloud. Now, what are the scale limitations and other questions you should ask? Everything has limitations of scale, limitations of availability. They may even be cost limitations. What are the operational risks of using the platform? How stable is the architecture? Meaning, is it going to change and cause certain disruptions for you? Is the vendor staff to provide support for you? What kind of support, quality support they provide? What kind of metrics they publish about availability, uptime, other statistics on the usage of the environment for you or across the board? How mature is the technology? How many customers are using it, in other words? How many are in production? Again, a lot of the PaaS environments out there are fairly young and fairly immature and have a small number of customers. Another question to ask is, what is the quality of the platform ecosystem? Is there a set of partners, a set of suppliers, integrated services, and so on around it? Is there a thriving marketplace whereby these services are easily discoverable and purchased and you can connect with the ecosystem? And last but not least, a group of questions around strategic risks. Are the lock-in trade-offs worth it? You know, every environment has some level of stickiness and lock-in. This is precisely what you're typically buying in a PaaS environment or cloud environment or any application development environment. You're betting on some style of technology. So what is that lock-in, and is the trade-off worth it? Are you getting enough return on investment to make that? What protections are available to mitigate against the lock-in? You know, so can you take the data out at any time? Is that part of the agreement that you signed? Can you run this off premises if you have to? These are various kinds of levels of mitigation. Will the vendor be around in 2 years? Have they been around for a while? Are they successful financially? Do they have deep pockets, etc.? Will the vendor change strategic focus? Would they potentially start paying attention to someone other than your category of enterprise, your vertical, your size, etc.? And last but not least, of course, will they raise prices unreasonably? All right? So that in general is sort of a set of questions that you should put together. And so in that context, let's sort of look at where we are with the Salesforce1 platform. I have a sort of a tally of the highlights of strengths and challenges or opportunities. In the Salesforce platform, so I'm going to sort of highlight top 4 in each case. There are many more benefits and many more opportunities for the platform. So Salesforce1 is a pure cloud platform. That actually gives them a purpose and focus in the way they deploy technology and simplicity. So we're talking about centralized web access from anywhere. That cloud enables developers, users to come at the very same platform, single version of the truth. That's a big advantage. Second important point is the availability of the Heroku PaaS as an alternative for other parts of the portfolio of your applications that may be written in Java or Ruby. So it's a value to the enterprise. You can put them under one roof. And Salesforce is constantly integrating these, provides common APIs, and allows code from either one to reach into components in the other platform. A third key value is access to data around the Salesforce applications in marketing and CRM and all the good stuff that they buy that's pre-packaged components with pre-packaged services. So you can combine custom code with stuff that they have developed themselves and are making available. Same data, same metadata, so you can easily access and build on the same customer sets and so on, integrated into your custom apps. And last but not least, there's the App Exchange, which is sort of this iconic marketplace that's been around, one of the earliest enterprise marketplace, probably the most powerful of its type in the industry. It's become an example of how to implement enterprise application marketplaces really for the industry overall. On the challenges and opportunities side, there's some areas that we found that are, some of the customers we talked to had some struggles. Some of that has changed in the sense that it's been worked on by Salesforce. So the developer tooling overall has been an area of great progress over the years. The IDE isn't quite as good as some of the client-side rich IDEs that are available. And there are some third parties, in fact, that offer IDEs, and how they work with Salesforce and produce better tools is something important, I think, for Salesforce to engage with. There are limitations on what you can do in a shared environment, like debugging, sandboxing, and so on. Another derivative of this sort of essential nature of cloud capabilities is the multi-tenant world and what it means when you're sharing resources. I mean, we all know about the halting problem and infinite loops and, queries that scan large database sets that developers put together. Well, in a cloud, that can be problematic. So there's these things called query governors that come back and tell you this query is too large, result set is too large, the time taken is too long. And that's been a problem for developers who like to experiment, and don't often write the best code right away. And it's been an area of pain, but again, Salesforce has tackled that. They've improved some, made more generous. As hardware's gotten more powerful, you can do a lot more without reaching into the query governors. Thirdly, it is a public cloud only, and this is obvious, of course, but some people need to implement solutions on-premise with the exact same architecture and productivity. So that's a challenge that Salesforce has. And last but not least, most users of Force do not tend to use Heroku, and most users of Heroku do not tend to use Force. And again, this is changing, and Salesforce is increasing that kind of synergy between them by providing a variety of tools and techniques. And of course, Heroku was acquired only about 2.5 years ago, whereas Force has been around for 6 or 7 years now. So that's sort of natural, but it is a challenge in terms of the synergy provided, and is there a value proposition here that's yet to be proven? And what is the value that customers can derive from it? So with that, I'm going to turn it back to, turn it back to Dylan.
Al, I'll take it back over from me. Yeah, thank you, Al.
You're welcome.
That was actually a fantastic presentation, and it really brings out the value of the Salesforce1 Platform. If you are interested in diving a little deeper into the results of the IDC white paper that covers the very same topic, you're welcome to visit us, our webpage at salesforce.com/platform, and you can find at the top of the page a link to that IDC white paper. Some of the numbers we're really proud of is hitting the 4 million applications mark built on top of Salesforce, the custom applications that really go beyond sales and service into other departments. If you have any questions that you want to pose to myself, to Al, or to our next speaker, please click the question box up at the top of the webinar, and you can submit those now, and we'll make sure to try to answer as many as we can at the end. And now I want to bring on, we've talked a lot about the values that the customers have been able to achieve, and now I want to bring on Elias Dea, who is the Senior Director of Business Operations, who has been working with Salesforce as a member of Motorola for the last 6 or 7 years or so. So Elias, welcome. We'd love to hear your story of how application development went at Motorola.
Great. Thank you so much, Dylan. As Dylan said, my name is Elias Dea. I am the Senior Director of Business Operations in the Software Engineering Organization here at Motorola. And kind of, quickly, as Dylan again mentioned, I've been working with Salesforce at Motorola since about 2007. Total, it's been about 8 years or so that I've been working on the platform. So I'm going to go over our use case here a bit. It's taken a while to get to where we are, but the power of the platform has allowed us to do that. So let's go ahead and begin. So let's talk about the actual use case. Why did we need the platform, right? The biggest need, plain and simple, we needed a way to consolidate and manage the software within Motorola. So every piece of software in a Motorola phone, right, we needed an easier way to manage that, right? Some of the problems included there was a lack of kind of automated device visibility, right? Which devices are going into which country? Did we have the visibility? Yes, but it wasn't automated. Partner management. There's a lot of third-party software we put on these devices. We need an easier way, a more automated way to manage that and integrate that with the management of the actual software, right? Licensing, managing contracts, same thing, right? Did we manage contracts? Yes. Was it consolidated and automated? It was not. And then our software bill of materials. This is the item that we pay our third-party suppliers, right? So we license software on our devices. It was a very manually intensive process to create these royalty reports every single quarter and send them out. We needed something to help automate that. Again, right, the multiple data sources, we've heard this multiple times, but separate siloed systems that some talk to each other, a lot of them didn't. We needed to consolidate that. And then again, going back to the software bomb, manually intensive royalty calculations. Calculating these royalties was a manually intensive process that would take several weeks every single quarter, right? And the solution, high level, right, was the platform, right? Let's get into a little bit more detail of exactly what that looked like. So I've got two slides. It's pretty simple. It's what the system looked like before and what the system looks like today. So here's the system before, right? I mean, one of the things hopefully you'll notice is that nothing is really connected, right? There's nothing very integrated. So when you look at this, look at it from left to right. Look at it from a life cycle, from a product life cycle perspective. So initially on the left side, you've got product device management. That's as soon as we think of a device, the Moto X, for example, or the Razor, right? As soon as we create that device, from then on it goes in, and now we start creating the software that goes on that device, right? The management of that software. As a subset of that software, some of the software we create, some of it we license from third parties. How do we manage those partners? That's the partner management. The fourth kind of silo database there is the contracts. Where are those contracts? How do we know that we can legally ship a piece of software, in Brazil, for example? And then from that, how do we consolidate and create a software bill of materials so that we can pay our third-party suppliers and partners the right amounts? And then, from then on, not only creating the software bomb, but again, the royalty accounting piece of it. And then, at the bottom, reports and dashboarding, right? But the one thing I think you can notice, see the product and device management, you see two databases. So a lot of this was a combination of databases, separate style databases, in some instances, right, some laptops and PDFs, a lot of it not easily talking to each other, right? And then you'll see at the bottom that the reporting, the lovely pivot table icon, right? That everyone loves to do reporting on, right? So that's really what the system looked like before, right? It was siloed. Did we get things done? Yes, but it was not automated. Everything did not easily sync. So let's quickly just look into what the platform did, and hopefully the first thing I'm hoping you will notice, right, is now everything you see in this little cloud is actually in the platform today, right? So again, we go left to right. So our software feature management, we've moved that into Jira, right? Jira has an out-of-the-box integration with Salesforce, right? We did a couple, more custom things on top of it, but it has an out-of-the-box integration with Salesforce. So now, our software management is now done inside Jira and Salesforce. It's synced. The device management, we've actually moved that into Salesforce completely, right? So the device management is in Salesforce natively, right? 90% of our Salesforce platform is custom objects, right? We're not typically using it as a typical CRM, right? We're using it as a software management tool. And again, left to right, these in Salesforce today, again, the biggest difference, these are essentially separate objects inside Salesforce, right? We've got a software feature management, object that integrates with the Jira. There's product management that integrates, that creates partner management, right? We're using the partner management portal inside of Salesforce. Contracts, we use a combination of Salesforce and Aptis. It's a Salesforce partner that helps us manage all of the contracts. EchoSign for the e-signature piece, and that keeps moving. The software bill of materials now lives solely inside Salesforce. It's the source of truth, where if you want to know which piece of software is on which phone, you're logging into Salesforce, you're finding out where that piece of software is. And then on the royalty accounting side, again, we use another partner of Salesforce, Zora, to the partner royalty accounting. The calculation of those third-party royalties is all inside Salesforce. And then, again, the reporting piece below there, everything is native inside Salesforce. If we wanted to bring in a BI tool or do anything or use native dashboarding, which we do inside Salesforce, everything is there. Everything is in a single source of truth, right? It's the old adage, if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. We've gotten there from a software management perspective. Everything lives inside Salesforce. All the data is there, and the platform has allowed us to do that because it's really a unique use case of what we're doing, right? So the platform's flexibility has allowed us to really do that, right? So, in summary, right, what we've seen, and I can go on for hours about this, right? But really, the big benefits for us, right, is a single source of truth. Everything you want to know, what piece of software, what contract is tied to where, what royalty we paid, everything is inside Salesforce, which allows us to give that end-to-end visibility, right? I call it that cradle-to-grave visibility of you can see a piece of software from when we, or a device, when we initially said, hey, we're going to put this on these phones all the way through the shipment of the device. How many units did we ship? Where did we ship it to? How did it do? And it consolidates the software management. All of the software management is in one source, is inside Salesforce, right? Again, we integrated the multiple data sources. Some of the data sources may have been old, so some of those we replaced with Salesforce, and others we simply integrated, right? We didn't, Jira made more sense to manage to manage the software, so great. Went with that and did a custom integration with Salesforce. Again, there's an out-of-the-box solution. We had a little bit more custom on top of that. And then, last and not least, rapid, easy iterations, right? When we're making enhancements to any of these items, they're quick, they're easy. Folks understand it now, right? There's no downtime, where we've got a test cycle, we've got a sandbox. It's quick and easy to get things up and running and going with us, right? So that's really, again, that's the gist of how we're using the platform. We're doing some more things on top of it as well. I know Al talked a little about it. We're doing some things with Heroku, but that's probably time for another. That could be another webinar. So that's in a nutshell here. That's Motorola. That's how we're using the platform internally to manage our software. So Dylan, let me go ahead and pass it back to you.
Thank you, Elias. Fantastic story of how you've deployed the platform. And before I open it up to general questions, I'd love to maybe ask you a question or two about Motorola's use case. It sounds like you really have gone to working on a process outside of sales and service. What kind of roles and what kind of individuals are really using this application and seeing the most value from this application? I'd imagine it's not the standard CRM type users.
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. Obviously, with the contracts being in, our legal team is in there a tremendous amount. Our business development team is in there, right? The biz dev folks are the ones that are getting the partners and signing the partners up. Our product management team is in there a lot, right? They're the ones creating the actual kind of software bill of materials. They're deciding which software goes on which phone. Then obviously, the typical folks on the IT side, and then finance is in there a large amount as well. From a royalty accounting perspective. So those are the biggest users right now. Again, outside of the traditional, sales teams that are typically in there, right?
Great. Yeah. And with your last point on rapid, easy iterations, I'd imagine you're not done developing on the platform. Do you have some more plans as far as this application goes, or other applications in the future that Motorola is considering?
Yeah, we do. There's kind of two big things I'm planning on doing this year. Number one is we're probably going to put a custom-built UI using Visualforce, right? A custom-built UI on top of all of this. We've got the framework finished, right? So now let's build a custom internal web UI that can do all of this for us. And then secondly, right, being obviously a mobile company is the mobile piece, right? We need to be able to have everyone access any of the data here at any time. And we're going to do a bigger push towards the mobile. I mean, obviously, with the newer Salesforce mobile app, you can do that today, but we're going to make a bigger push. Those are going to be the two biggest pushes this year. Is going to be the custom UI pieces, since the framework is on, and going mobile.
Great. Well, as you said, we do have the option Salesforce1 mobile apps available in the iTunes and Android store. So any folks out there who want to download it and take it for a spin, it automatically surfaces all your standard applications, Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, as well as any custom applications that you build. So thank you so much, Elias. Now what I'd like to do is open it up to questions from the audience. So anyone who's out there, click that question button at the top of the webinar. Go ahead and submit your questions, and we'll answer them here live. And I already see a few questions that are coming in today. So my first question actually looks like it's for Al, if you're on, Al. So the question is, should mid-size or smaller companies be evaluating PaaS differently than some of the larger enterprises? And will they see some of the same gains that you outlined in your study?
Well, that's a good question. Large organizations. I mean, look, there are differences between the types of companies there are, and everybody has different needs. But if we're to generalize, I mean, we know that large organizations tend to have larger apps, more scale requirements, larger variety of requirements, needs for different kinds of PaaSes or solutions, more legacy code to bring into one-stop shop style PaaSes. For example, maybe they may be interested in solutions which have infrastructure as a service as well as PaaS capability. These are some of the kind of things, where they'd be different, right? Large organizations may have more at stake with a decision, so cost factors and strategic safety issues may be bigger. Large organizations have more developers, more skills. So again, to some degree, their decision matrix may be a little different. So these are things that could shift people to one type of solution versus another, one type of company or another. SMEs, on the other hand, small, mid-sized companies, I mean, they often are betting their company on such technology, and so it's not like it's unimportant to them what kind of decision they make. So often it's even more critical, but they often have smaller applications. I'd say that today, I mean, this day and age, small, medium-sized organizations are the natural. We think are the natural for cloud services in general, PaaS potentially as well. They may be unable to staff up or buy, install, manage infrastructure at the same way, same level. They certainly don't have quite the sunk cost in data centers that large companies. So these are important differentiators that may drive people to different directions. I think if you go back to the slide that we showed where the abstraction, different styles of development and so on, I'd say that small and medium-sized companies will find these abstractions are much more important, much more powerful, much more valuable even than larger companies. Right?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I would say, just to add on to that, from my experience speaking with dozens of customers across the world, that small and medium-sized businesses, in addition to seeing the cost savings of not having to set up their own infrastructure, which can be kind of beyond the range and beyond the means of a smaller organization, there's also the gains of not needing a large development shop or needing to contract out development work for applications. So oftentimes, because business analysts can build apps on the Salesforce1 platform if they understand the business needs, they're certainly able to get as much value as these enterprises, or sometimes more, because they don't have those large development resources. So great question. I have another one, and this one is for Elias. Elias, did you look at any other vendors besides Salesforce when you're thinking about building your apps, and why did you end up choosing Salesforce particularly?
Great, thank you. I get that asked a lot. We did. We looked at a few other SaaS competitors. We looked at NetSuite, we looked at Sugar. We finally ended up going with Salesforce, and primarily because of the flexibility of the platform and the ecosystem, right? Their app exchange was in a better place than any other one, right? So that the app exchange, what that allows us to do, and not just us, everyone else, they've got so many partners on there. If you're looking to do any integrations or any other things, the app exchange can probably help you be a couple steps ahead, because more likely than not, there could be already solutions on there for the partner you're looking to do. So the flexibility of the platform and the app exchange was the biggest reason we went with Salesforce.
Great. I have another question coming in, and Al, this might be one for you. The question is about agility, and what's the impact on the ability to develop new apps faster or develop multiple apps simultaneously using the same number of kind of infrastructure needs, so servers, test beds, things like that. So not needing to have multiple different servers to test and deploy apps. Was that something that had an impact on the agility that you saw in this study?
Yeah, and that's a great question. In fact, we actually addressed that in the paper, so I definitely encourage the person who's asking to download the paper and look at it. Figure 2 in the paper, we actually show some of those savings in things like, we call them service management KPIs, application time to market, for example, in weeks. The new solution typically with Salesforce platform, we're deployed 70% faster in time, 70% less time, 3 weeks versus 10 weeks, for example. Also, many more apps were indeed launched. 80% more apps were actually launched with the new solution versus the prior on-premises solution. And I guess lastly, I'd say that the staff weeks, spent per application project were also reduced about 46%. So we have these metrics, and we describe that agility, and I agree that that's a super important added value. So yeah, absolutely.
Great. And you can access that paper. Anyone on the webinar can download that by going to salesforce.com/platform, and there's a banner at the top to dig deeper into dev test environment. One of the big benefits a lot of our customers talk about as well is the fact that as we update Salesforce and push new features and functionality, if you built your application on Salesforce, you'll automatically get those updates. So your application will not be stuck with its current functionality, and it will not break when we add new features and updates. And we do 3 release updates a year. So that's certainly a value accelerator for a lot of our customers who build on the platform. Let's do one last question for Al. There's a follow-on question that says that Motorola has used the App Exchange apps in the diagram that you showed. These are apps that are built by our partners on Salesforce and can be installed into your existing Salesforce instance. And the question is, how strategic is the App Exchange to your overall strategy? And did it influence your choice in Salesforce?
So that's actually a question for Elias.
I'm sorry, yeah, for Elias.
That's for me, right? So how many applications have we built on the Force versus Sales Cloud? Several, right? And several, it's more than 3 or 4. We really, look at it individually based on the requirements internally, right? It depends, which way we will go from a development perspective. Right now, to answer that, how strategic is the App Exchange? It's considered every time we look at a new app internally, right? If there's a new system, a new requirement internally, one of the first questions is, hey, okay, can Salesforce do it, right? Number one, can it do it? Typically, the answer is yes, right? It's software and the platform. If you want to just code it yourself, you can go code it yourself, right? But if once the answer is yes, the second question following that is, hey, does something similar already exist on the App Exchange specifically, right? So let's go take a look at that, see how it's going to impact what we do, right? Because us having such a unique use case, the App Exchange, the out-of-the-box App Exchange apps may not easily fit, right? Again, it's pretty simple to integrate and make these things work, but it is definitely something that we look at every time a new requirement or new project need arises, right? We're looking at, hey, can this be integrated with Salesforce? Yes, great. Can we do it? Okay, should we go down the App Exchange side of the house and see if there's something on App Exchange that we can do it, and then we evaluate it that way. And hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah,
Dylan,
Yep, go ahead, Al.
Dylan, yeah, I just want to add to that because we actually had one customer highlighted this specifically in our interviews, and we actually mentioned that in the paper, which is that's App Exchange is like their first go-to place to find a solution whenever something crops up, and then only if there's no such solution they can even consider developing. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, and Al, sorry, to add to that, right, it's the whole, right, the build versus buy decision, right? It's a little bit different, right, because the App Exchange, a lot of it, it's like, okay, well, most of it's built, so if you need to do a little bit, but, it goes back to a typical build versus buy, right?
And anyone who wants to check out the apps that are available on the App Exchange, anyone can visit appexchange.com and browse through the compilation of apps we have there by department and by role and by industry. So we're just about out of time. With that, I want to just say thank you for everyone who participated today, especially to Elias and Al, who joined us from different locations. And I want to let you know that if you have more questions about the platform, please visit salesforce.com/platform. You can reach out to us directly via our emails or Twitter handles. And I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.